supply chain includes importing lots of foreign source goods, then nothing on this slide will be a surprise to you, because container management and landed costs require you to have excellent visibility into the availability of your goods. This is critical to your profitability. You deal with unpredictability all the time. A storm at sea or a work stoppage at your port can unexpectedly delay the arrival of your goods by as much as a week or more. So you need the capability to do mass updates. And with talking with distribution companies that have international supply chains, these four main topics that you see on the screen keep coming up. And it's not just purchasing, because your customer-facing people need accurate and real-time information about when goods are expected to arrive so that they can make promises to your customers. For distribution importers, it's sort of a good news, bad news situation. The good news with foreign sourcing is obviously that you get the goods at a significant reduced unit cost. The bad news with foreign sourcing are those inevitable and unpredictable challenges of managing the flow of goods as they come across the water. These much longer lead times versus costs have created a critical need to track all the additional costs associated with these imported goods. You might have to create larger safety stock levels to minimize these unplanned disruptions. And take delivery terms, for example. In a traditional domestic model, you didn't have to pay for your purchased goods until you received them. But with the new import tracking model, the purchase and legal ownership typically takes place long before the goods arrive at your warehouse or facility. So the ability to track your import activities and to account for these costs is a very important part of your supply chain process. Today's topic is obviously import tracking, and at first I realize that there are many people on this call today who have never seen Sage ERP X3 in action. So before getting into the import tracking topic per se, I wanted to share just a very few things related to usability and navigation. And you can see that these are the specific topics that I want to show to you today, but we will begin with an overview of usability and mobility in version 7. So with that, let me switch over to a screen, a home page, if you will, a personal page that is entitled Distribution in Sage ERP X3. And the first thing that I want to talk to you about and take just a quick look at a few of the many highlights you will want to incorporate into your international sourcing business is to remind you that Sage ERP X3 is 100% web native. That means that it's designed out of the box to improve your ease of use with the product. With these browser-based functional capabilities, they exist across the entire solution. You can use multiple browsers, Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Apple's web server or web browser. You're able to use any of the browsers, and they run anytime, anywhere, and on any smart device. If you have a device that can connect to the web, you can navigate to Sage ERP X3. You'll also see roles-based home pages, bookmarks across the top. You can personalize all the screens, and you obviously have full integration to Microsoft Office, which enables your users to work smarter and faster. So in the multi-browser sense, if your users in your company access Google or MSN or Facebook or Instagram, you'll know how to use X3 because it's browser agnostic. It reduces the perceived risk because all of your employees already know how to surf the web, access it anytime, anywhere from any smart device, as I said a moment ago, and even to the point that if desired, you could extend X3 out to your business partners. One of the things I wanted to show you is that in the multi-browser role is, in this case, I switched the screen into Mozilla Firefox, In this case, we're logged in with a different user ID. And if you look at the left side of the screen, as I scroll down, you'll see the 23 different roles that you get with Sage ERP X3 out of the box. And here on the main part of the screen, I have one labeled Material Buyer. This is a purchasing role. And what you can do is personalize each role's homepage to present the information that is most relevant to them to excel at their individual jobs on a day-to-day basis. For example, there are a couple of requesters on this key information tab. If you will, this is a hot list. This is showing your material buyer what late purchase requests exist and what late purchase orders exist, intending to prompt that person to deal with these late purchase orders first thing when they come in the morning. And then on the Business Process tab, you see concept called Visual Process Maps. I'll return to these in another version in just a moment, but these are very popular. There are about 140 of these that you get out of the box. They do not require you to be a programmer to define them or adapt them or personalize them. If you can edit a PowerPoint slide, you can work with these visual process maps. So that's Mozilla Firefox. You could also do the same thing in Internet Explorer, but I'm going to return now to Google Chrome. And this, as you look at this example, here's one of those visual process maps that is talking about advanced distribution. And we'll be spending most of our time on this visual process map today. But across the top, I have 4 tabs that I want to show you that can illustrate 4 different examples of things you can do with your personal home pages in Sage ERP X3. The first one I'll call Daily Updates. This is a demo sample from one of our X3 customers. They are a Red Bull distributor located in northern Illinois. But imagine for your business, this information is about your company. It would have your name there, would have your weather forecast here. And I'm using a free NetVibes application, and you can embed many types of different web content into your homepage. For example, you can see the weather or the latest blog entries that are available, whatever you want to put here. You'll notice that there's a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page, and a Twitter page that you can access as well, because you surely realize that what is said about your company outside the 4 walls has just as much influence as what happens inside the 4 walls. You can also, I'll scroll down to the bottom of this page, and you can see I added another website for the Sage ERP X3 so you can begin to get some ideas. I was just going to drag this down here. Let's see if I can get close to it. There we go. This is just a little paid advertisement. You are with me today here on the 29th of May looking at growing forward with Sage ERP X3 version 7 for importing for distribution, but we have 2 more of these webinars scheduled and set up, so I would urge you to take advantage of that. The last 2 that you see here are focused on managing credit card transactions and accurate sales tax reporting. So that is what is available to you as a daily update version. If you look at the next tab I'm going to scroll over to, this is called, it opens up a freight forwarder website. So now on this tab, imagine that this is a login screen for you that logs you into one of your business partners for your importing business. This obviously is just an example, but it would take you to a login screen where you could embed your login credentials either to a freight forwarder or to one of your container lines company partners, your broker, or even to your supplier's website. Whatever website or login screens you need can be placed inside your own personal homepage. Or here's another example that you want to give your warehouse people. It's a calendar view called Orders to Receive Calendar. For your purchasing activities, you want Sage ERP X3 to present to your warehouse when they are to expect those containers that are coming from overseas. Your users will have real-time key performance indicators or business intelligence on their desktop images. So by placing these on their home page, it would open up and say that they would be expecting purchase order number 76 to arrive at your receiving dock on the 15th of May. Even though this is an example, it gives your warehouse receiving staff a calendar view of expected receipts. It's very valuable for your people to have that. So going back to the Advanced Distribution Visual Process Map, you can see a lot of icons here. These visual process maps are one of the most popular features of Sage ERP X3 because they simplify and replace your users having to memorize menu structures, navigation steps. Over 140 of these visual process maps come off the shelf, and you can adapt these to your business. For example, this line here can look, it sort of has a customer and a sales focus. You have sales orders, you have pick, pack, and ship options, and then you schedule the sales shipments for delivery, and those then are sent out to accounts receivable or shipping. We'll spend some time up here in the purchasing line, but you can see a purchase workbench, purchase orders. We'll open this vessel and container tracking image in just a moment, but receiving and then to the payables for the purchase invoices. But you get lots of these visual process maps along with many menus down the left-hand side. And I'm going to open up an order processing icon so that you can begin to see a general view of some of the usability features and navigation capabilities that are in the X3 solution. I'm going to open up one, and I think I'm going to make this full screen as soon as it opens. And let's give it a moment, and we'll be able to take a look at a sales order process or a typical sales order screen. I'm going to maximize it. Well, I should have done this first. Let's go look at this. Down the left side of the screen is a listing of all the sales orders that you have issued. Now, again, these are sales orders, and then in the right panel will be some commands and other context-sensitive functionality that is available to you. And then here in the main part of the screen is the sales order itself. So now let me expand it again. This is an example that shows it could be the customer's purchase order number to you, who the customer is, but it's here on this Lines tab that distribution companies need specific functionality. They want their customer service reps or your salespeople, the sales order entry people, to simply enter a product and a quantity and maybe tab off to the next screen or the next line, if you will. But if you look at these column headings, as you work your way across this, you can see the ordered quantity, the description. You can have different ship-to addresses on different lines of your sales orders, as well as different ship dates. And you can have different sources for delivery. Notice, for example, that one of these lines is a purchase order that we're going to receive and ship. And there's even a purchase order number 67 assigned to it. That lets you know that if you do use import tracking in Sage ERP X3, you could tie that purchase order to this particular sales line if you wanted to. Notice some of the colors that are in some of the cells. There's a yellow background highlight to this second line for a quantity of 10. You'll notice if you look out further to the right that there's a shortage here. So that yellow background color in the cell is intended to give you instantly a quick visual reminder that there is a shortage for this particular item and it needs to be replenished before you can fill that particular aspect of this sales order. So that's just a quick introduction to a few of the many navigation and usability features you get with Sage ERP X3 version 7. And let's now return to our topic for today, vessel and container tracking or import tracking, if you will. And as you look at this visual process map, we're going to spend most of our time in this one today. But in normal domestic purchasing activities, you would issue a purchase order to your vendor, you would receive the goods, and then you would receive a purchase invoice to pay the vendor or the supplier for their shipped goods. But with vessel and container tracking or import tracking, there's these additional steps that are here in the middle. You have to create the container and assign it to a vessel. And then obviously you want to be able to do accurate landed cost calculations. So these intermediate steps you see here in the middle are going to give you the visibility and the accuracy that you need in tracking your inbound landed costs. Now this module, which is part of the X-ray purchasing functionality, creates inbound shipments that can contain multiple purchase orders, partial purchase orders, multiple items or multiple containers, and various landed cost charge types. As you know, the delivery parameters for conducting international business vary from your traditional domestic model. The title transfer or the legal ownership of the goods you're purchasing overseas can and usually does occur long before the goods arrive at your warehouse or functionality. And I'm going to return to this visual process map in just a moment, but I wanted to give you another bit of background, and this is by opening up another way of looking at Sage ERP X3. And if you have people on your staff that want to go old school, and you can still have the more traditional menus grouped by their main function. For example, you can have customer relationship or purchasing or sales or inventory, manufacturing, costing, finance, and accounting. You get this. X3 is a complete solution from top to bottom. It's all in a single solution, a single database, if you will. But looking at this purchasing function, and I'm going to ask you to track your attention to import tracking, these are typical setup areas that you can use to help you create the degree of detail that you need to track. These are the different needed functions that as an import distributor you will require, where you set up your vessels or containers or landed costs or shipping status, in transit ownership or import inquiries. We'll look at all these in just a moment. But this navigation menu is the place where you do most of your import tracking setups. Taking an example of looking at delivery parameters, this opens a screen that has several important column headings here. For example, you want to define your freight terms. The term or the word Incoterm is a function that contains a list of all the freight term codes that have been standardized by the International Chamber of Commerce. These freight terms are the contractual provisions for your purchases and are used when you enter into a purchase agreement with a foreign supplier. These Incoterms dictate how many aspects of the product cost are managed, and it's based on who pays for what. So let me just open one here. Here's one called Free on Board. It's a very common one. I'm going to open it up so that you can begin to see how this works. In this case, you can see that the charges for this Free on Board freight term, the first 4 or 5 aspects of this, the packing, the loading, the pre-transportation, the customs formalities, and the main transport loading, these are all paid by your business partner, the supplier, the seller. But the remaining ones in this Free on Board freight term agreement, you are expected to pay for as the buyer. In Sage ERP X3, these codes are used when you are purchasing products for which you want to track your landed costs. You want to give your landed costs some cost structures. Let's return back to this previous screen, and here's another important column. When does ownership transfer? What is the date that triggers when the ownership changes from the supplier being the owner to you being the owner and legal transfer takes place? As you can imagine, there are 4 logical dates or places where legal ownership can be transferred. At the bill of lading date, that is when your supplier has finished packing and has created the container's bill of lading document. It could be at the port of arrival, the date at which the container arrives at your selected port. Or it could be when the container is released from customs. Or perhaps it could be when you receive it at your physical location, your facility, your site, if you will. So when you look at these examples, you can see all of these different terms have different ownership transfer triggers. So this is some of the important setup work that you will do. And we'll cancel out of this and go back to that visual process map that we are going to spend the rest of the time at. And this we'll look now and see where those setup activities that I showed you in import tracking just a moment ago will start to come together. And in this case, let's open up a purchase order. You can set up these purchase orders, and they're just standard purchase orders for domestic or international. Looking at a supplier order screen, you see in the left panel here a listing of all your X3 purchase orders. And then there are the functions and the commands that appear in the right panel. But pretty much here in the center part is where the purchase order exists. This is purchase order number 77. It's to your Chinese supplier called Foxconn. And here in the main part on the management tab is some information that you need to be aware of. There are important fields here for me to highlight for you. First one is the currency. In this particular example, the currency is Chinese yuan. You can specify purchase orders in foreign currencies if this is needed. You scroll down to the bottom and you see that in the transport block of this, you can see who your carrier is. It's Evergreen Container Lines. It's intended to be shipped by sea transport. And then this is where one of those Incoterms, the cost plus freight, is designated there. And again, all this defaults in based upon your agreed upon freight terms and declarations of who pays whom, what, and when. So let's look at the miscellaneous tab. Again, more defaulted information. You may have a broker service that you use to help you manage your import tracking activities, or you may want to specify that from certain suppliers you only take full containers. And then you can also specify the size of the containers, whether it's 12, 20. You get the idea that you have lots of flexibility when it comes to this. But it is here on the Lines tab that we'll spend just a little bit of time, because there are lots of valuable information bits that are available for you as the material buyer. You obviously want to see what the product is, the description is, and you'll notice here that there are two lines for the same product, DIS 012. As you work your way across, you see that there's in this case, they're both 15,000 units have been ordered. One is expected to be received on the 21st of May. The other one is not expected to be received until July 13th. But it is here, these next two columns, that you begin to see some important capabilities with import tracking. Sage ERP X3 has assigned the first 15,000 of this purchase order to a container number, a sequence number 7, and its container line number 1000. But the second 15,000 have not yet been assigned to a shipping container. They're waiting to be picked or packed by your foreign-based supplier. So as you look at across these, there are 4 different products on this purchase order, 12, 13, 14, and 15. All of the lines have been split, and it looks like partial quantities for the 4 lines or the 4 products have been assigned and listed or placed into a shipping container. And this example gives you the assurance that you can split your purchase order lines if the container over in the foreign port cannot get all of the items into a single container but needs to split them across multiple containers. X3 will automatically sequence those for you. So speaking of containers and vessels, let's go back out now. That was the purchase order we just looked at. Let's open up a vessel screen just for example. Again, down the left side are your listing of all the available vessels or ships that you're looking at. You can, for example, open up the Gainesville. The name of this ship is the Gainesville. It has a flag number or a registration number of this. And here on the, you can see that it is part of the carrier, the Maersk group. And you can see that it is an ocean type of vessel. Sage ERP X3 import tracking works mostly with ocean-going vessels, but you need to know that it can support air traffic or air shipments as well. For example, this is one, your partner in this case is actually Delta Airlines. The vessel name is, maybe it's the airplane, or it's actually flight number 19, which is coming from Shanghai, China to LAX, Los Angeles, California. So you're able to set those up as well if you need to do air shipments. Or looking at another vessel, this is an ocean going, it's with Evergreen Container Lines. And this has been assigned a sequence number as vessel number 2 by Sage ERP X3. And when you look at this, you can actually see some of the different statuses that are associated with this particular vessel. As you can imagine, it follows basically the logic as you would expect. You have created you've registered the vessel, you've entered all this default information into it. The shipment has left the foreign port, it's on the ocean, it's crossing the waters. Then the next stage you would expect or status would be at the port, perhaps at Los Angeles or one of the East Coast ports if you come out of those areas. And then if it has been received, it has been cleared customs and it's ready to be received, then it would show up here as well. So this gives you the ability to manage those statuses that are available to you. Notice also there's other information here. It has the departure port, the arrival port, and some of the dates that are associated with it as well. This is important. Most important are the containers that you put on this particular ship. This one is called the Billie Jean, and it has, in this example, you can see that it has different containers that are associated with it. And let's see, let me get back to my, my notes here. These 3 containers are assigned to it, so we're going to step back out and look at this. Look at one of these containers. We looked at ships a moment ago. Let's go back out and look at containers. And you can see a listing of all your containers here. The Sage ERP X3 has assigned a sequential number that is associated with it. And then once the containers have been finished packing, your supplier will create a bill of lading number that then gets assigned to it as well. So in this case, we'll just simply open up this container name, and again, these are all user definable. There's the tracking number, the sequence number, who it's associated with, and scrolling down here, you can see what the status is. Again, looking at the statuses based on the dates, the container has been created, it has been shipped, it's actually in our North American port, a receiving port, it has been released into domestic shipping, it's been dispatched or loaded onto a truck here in the United States or Canada or wherever, or the container has actually been received. So whenever you see these status codes, it gives you very good visibility and you're able to understand what is going on there. Looking further down the screen, you see some of the broker information. You may have different business partners to do your brokering or your dispatching. It could be that you have a freight forwarder you want to manage, and they are able to put their information here, or a customs entry number, whether or not it has been released and the dates associated with that. At the bottom of the screen is the container freight section. This is a very real scenario where your supplier may only have a partial container, or they may want to unload a container and repack it into another container. So you can use a container freight station, and these could be done either by your supplier or by a third-party business partner that you want to work with to repack those container freight stations there. The next tab that will be important to you is, again, to look at the vessel. So you can see here that this particular container, FC1028, has been assigned to a ship called the Texas. It's an ocean-going ship owned by Evergreen Container Lines, and this shows you the estimated start date, a receipt date, arrival date, actual dates. You can manage those and the arrival port names associated with that. On the Contents tab is another thing that you will find very beneficial with Sage ERP X3's import tracking. Notice that the contents of this container have 3 different purchase orders. If you look at it this way, we can resort them from purchase order 75, 2 lines from 76, and 2 lines from purchase order number 77. So think about it. We have this container number tied to these purchase orders and assigned to this vessel number. So this is where you're able to do all of this linkage and make sure that X3 manages all this for you so that you're able to see this. Then as you want, you can drill into and see the quantities, you can see the packing slip numbers, any sorts of information. And by clicking on this action icon, if you needed to, as a user, to drill back to the purchase order, this would navigate you directly back to the demand, the generation of the purchase order that created the demand for this container. Or if you wanted to look at the landed cost charges for this one line of the container, you could do it here by clicking on this called the Calculate Landed Cost Charges. You could do this in multiple currencies. You can create your own user-definable cost buckets, duty charges, and user-defined cost charges. And then last is where we get to the adjust quantity. You will remember on the purchase order, I showed you purchase orders with split lines. This would be where your supplier would adjust the quantities that they're placing into this particular container, which would automatically split the line back on the original purchase order. So changes that take place here will automatically be reflected back in the original purchase order. And again, as this could be where the supplier had to make changes to what they could pack into the container. So we've got a container here. It has 3 different purchase orders on it. And I want you to remember 75, 76, and 77 because I want to show you a new feature that is in the version 7 of Sage ERP X3. And notice now we're going to do a quick landed cost calculation just for this one container. You see the container has its bill of lading number, which means it's finally packed, and it is giving you immediate visibility over your expected landed costs that can be prorated across the contents and lines for this one container. If you look across the bottom here, you see purchase order 75, 76, and 77. You see the container numbers that are here, the various products that are associated with it. And what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to pay attention to this column right here. We're going to prorate some freight charges for this container. And this is what is new in version 7. With the prorating that you get in version 7, you now have these drop downs. You can do it based on the quantity, which would be just simply adding up all the units here and evenly distributing the freight cost by the quantity of the items that are in the container, or you could do it by the value of the items in the container. The purchase order price that you paid for these, you may have some items that are much more expensive than others, so you want to prorate it based on the value or the amount. We're going to click on one and do it based on the weight. If certain items are heavier than others, you want to have the system prorate those charges. So first one I'm going to do is we're going to just enter a hypothetical freight charge for this one container of $3,500. You can see there's some fixed broker fees, and there's also, I'm going to enter some additional landed costs. These are just user-definable fields. You have, I think, up to 12 different landed cost fields that are here. And by clicking on this, we're going to run the update. Now, what I want you to do, once we run the update, we're going to see the numbers in this column change based upon the weight of the goods that you see here. You see the weights that are associated. They're measured in kilograms. Let me click on the update button. And we'll now notice that whenever it updated, it changed these based on $689.30. So this shows you that it's calculated this out so that this first line, which weighs around 2,600 kilos, it's going to prorate the freight based on $689.30. Let's just take it and do it in a different method, though, to give you an idea of what is associated with it. Let's do it based on the value this time. I'm going to enter the same 3,500. And we'll leave everything else the same. And again, watch how this number changes based on the value of the goods as well, because it recalculated all of these items and determined that the freight based on the value or the amount of the purchase order, the contents of the container, actually went up a little bit, and the most expensive were the iPhone 6 Pluses that are part of this purchase order and part of this container. Now, I only showed you two methods. I showed you amount and weight, but you also get the capability to do it by quantity or volume. These both are functional and work in exactly the same way. Again, a nice new feature of version 7. So that's landed cost by the container. We'll return to landed cost calculation in a moment to do it on a whole purchase order, and we'll get to that in just a moment. We saw it by container, and we'll come at it in another moment. But I wanted to take another quick view at these batch processes and inquiries. In-transit ownership. This is something that obviously you realize you have many ships, many purchase orders, many containers that are all in varying degrees of fulfillment. Some are still in the foreign port, some are on the water, some are at your arrival port, some are actually in domestic transportation to get to your receiving dock at your place there. You need a way to automate the monitoring process. So Sage ERP X3 has a few of these batch jobs that can be automatically scheduled to keep things in sync for you. One, for example, is a batch job called in-transit ownership. You'll remember when I showed you the delivery parameters a bit ago, you saw the various trigger points where you would take legal ownership of the goods you're importing. This in-transit ownership process allows you to take financial responsibility for the goods based on the freight terms that you saw earlier. This batch job will write transactions to your GL, your general ledger, to reflect the value of the goods. One important observation to make here: this is not an inventory receipt. Your salespeople or your warehouse people will not be able to see quantities on their stock by site inquiry screens. You will see these quantities when we run the import inquiry function in just a moment. Or looking at the update ship status. This is obviously in the real world, your organization will have all these multiple vessels, multiple containers on the water at any given point in time. So to keep all the dates and the statuses synchronized, this batch application has been provided. You simply schedule this job to run daily, which will eliminate the need to constantly update all of the in-process import deliveries. And then last thing, we'll spend some time looking at this import inquiry, because this brings us to the topic of product visibility. And again, imagine you're expanding your supply chain to include foreign source goods. So it becomes essential to track your import activities to give yourself and your people and your company an accurate view of expected materials and their availability. So this inquiry gives you visibility into the inherent unpredictability of long ocean-going transportation. As events affect the supply chain, you can view the latest updates of expected arrival dates. So Sage ERP X3 gives you abilities to easily update the information at the shipment to vessel level and quickly update all the affected purchase order dates. This is a key component in managing this process. So I'm going to click on Import Inquiry now, and it's going to open up the screen asking me to enter the product I want to look up. And in this case, it's DIS012. It's an iPad. I could enter a site here, but if you don't want to, if you'd like to be able to see all the imports that are coming across all your sites, you simply click on the search button in the right-hand panel, and it will display for you a listing of all of the imports that you are expecting. You can see here that you can manage this tool or have it manage the tool across multiple sites. You see the container name. I think I showed you Foxconn 1028-1935. You can see those container status codes that I showed you. You obviously see the item number here and the expected quantities, the associated that are part of these inbound deliveries, these inbound shipments. You can also see the items, what ship they're on, and what the ship status is that is available here. The shipment's departure date, the port of arrival. You could even put arrival date if this was something that you wanted on here. The point of departure, the point of arrival, and then obviously the bill of lading information here. The container name is what gives you in-transit warehouse visibility. You can see that there are 15,000 units of this particular product in this particular container number, another container number, and that sort of thing. But it gives you the visibility, and bear in mind what I said, these items are seen by the X-ray financials because you already own them. Items which have already been received at your site will not display on this listing. So make sure you understand these are the ones that are still in transit. You want the visibility of your in-transit inventory, and that's what we're looking now at, product visibility. Now this is an import inquiry screen, but if you wanted to, you could print this and it will convert into a crystal report PDF type report. I'm not going to take the time to do it, but you could print this or email this or obviously, send it to one of your suppliers or one of your freight forwarders or customs house, whatever you need to do. You're able to do this based on that provision and that capability. So that was import inquiry. But a second method of providing you with visibility is to do something in X3. It's called projected stock availability, and it looks at your projected stock. And I'm going to do one here. Well, here we go. We're in a product site record now. We're looking at the same product. We're looking at the same storage site. In this case, it's NA011. And way over here in the lower right-hand corner is a projected stock that displays for you all of the same information that you saw earlier. You have firm purchase orders. You can see all of your open purchase orders that are associated with it, the delivery site, start date, end dates, the planned quantities, remaining quantities, and you begin to see that whenever you start with 15,000, you expect to receive 15. You're going to end up with 30. You add 30 more, or I'm sorry, you add 30 more, and I started this on the wrong column. Let's do it here. 35 and 30 gets you 65. You're expecting another 15,000. That gets you to your 80. So you're able to see what your expected stock quantities are available for you to be able to see. You obviously could, if you wanted to, drill into the purchase order that you wanted to look to as well. So that was the projected stock that is associated. But over here, I'm going to drill to one more because this opens up a slightly different screen, and this shows you available stock in a calendar view. You can see the site, the product, the unit, the reference date, the date that we're taking the view. I'm going to switch this over to a monthly view and click search here, and it will refresh the screen, and let me scroll down to the bottom of the screen that you begin to see. So everything before today's date will display in this column. Everything for the next month, May, June, July, you get the idea. Things that display in blue quantities are your available or planned quantities of your inventories. Red numbers represent the demand. These are planned or firm sales orders that will consume your inventory. And then the gray-black, whether it's this one line here or mostly here at the bottom of the screen, represents your planned supply. When these ocean-going vessels and shipments are planned or expected to arrive at your sites and facilities. So any changes that you make to the expected receipt days or delays would display in this line. You'll notice in this line there's a quantity of 45,000, 75,000, and 30,000. These are showing that you're expecting another 75,000 in June and another 30,000 in the month of July. The reason why I wanted to show you this, well, I'll show it to you in just a moment. But anyway, let's take a look here. Another way to view this is using a graph button. And this, again, shows you your expected receipts. There's that 75,000. There's the 30,000. And obviously, if you had sales orders, they would be dragging this line across the top down because they would be decrementing the inventory that you have there. But this gives you an excellent way to be able to visualize what your visibility of your inventory levels for these particular products are. Now, at this time, I want to show you a third method to use product visibility. With Sage ERP X3, you have what we call mobility. And let's see if I can open it up here. It's right here. This I am doing inside the demo image, but if you could imagine this being on an iPad or even an iPhone, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. You could resize this to make this look like an iPhone or a smartphone. It could be Android, Windows, Apple, Safari, any of the operating systems for the phones would do the trick for you. But you get, with core Sage ERP X3, you get these mobility applications. This is another very powerful and very popular thing that comes with the solution. There's 7 of these apps that come out of the box. I'm going to open up one called Available Stock. So imagine a user, or not even an X3 user, but someone out in the field, a remote sales rep, a warehouse manager is on vacation, whatever. You can pick the scenario that works best for your business, but they need to be able to check available stock. So we're doing an available stock inquiry from an iPad. So using that same item that we used a moment ago, DIS012, and tabbing off and entering the site number, using the iPad functionality, you can see it's going to ask you to say what is today's, or what is the date of the inquiry you want to look at. And you can do it by day, you can do it by week, or by month. So I'm simply going to click on this month period to display, and then you click with your search. Now, obviously, you can see me doing this with a mouse, but on an iPad, you'd be doing this with your finger. You would be dragging the screen down to be able to see the quantities that are there. Your remote sales reps can see that same 45,000, 75,000, and 30,000 by daily, weekly, or monthly buckets. Imagine putting this tool into your sales reps' hands while they're sitting across the desk from a table from one of your customers who's asking, how many of this particular item can I purchase? If I give you a purchase order in June of 2015, would you have enough in inventory to cover the order? Well, obviously, this is a future receipt, and import tracking is going to manage those expected receipts, but you can tell your rep, or your rep can see from this handheld device view, that they've got a pretty good handle on what your expected receipts are. This iPad use, this mobility tool, is a very powerful, very popular tool that many of our customers are using. So let's go back to Sage ERP X3. I'm going to come back out to our visual process map here, and we'll quickly process the purchase invoice and then the receiving. We'll do purchase invoice, and this, again, opens up another screen. All of your purchase invoices are here. The invoice number we're looking at here is invoice number 20. We can make it go full screen to get more information on there as well. And as I noted earlier, contra your domestic purchases, you notice here that you take legal ownership of your purchased goods before they begin their ocean-going trip. And here in the Management tab, you see the source and payment blocks. There's lots of information. You're paying it to Foxconn. It's in Chinese currency. You have a daily exchange rate that is valuable for you there. You also have the internal reference. That's your PO number, payment terms. You can also put your Incoterms, cost and freight Incoterms that are there as well. It's the Lines tab that you want to look at, or we'll look at next. The column headings, again, are important for you. You have the container's bill of lading number, the purchase order number, the various sequence or the purchase order line numbers, the products that are there, the quantities that you're purchasing and you're paying for, what the net price is in the local currency of the particular item. If you want to see it in both the foreign currency and U.S. currency, click on the costing tab, and that will open up both the Chinese yuan as well as the U.S. dollars. And if you wanted also, you could drill into these other X3 functions as well. You could drill to the purchase order, do some line cost details. You get the ideas that are very important for you to be able to do that. Important note, import tracking in Sage ERP X3 is purposefully designed to handle quantity and invoice changes at any point prior to the actual receipt of the goods. Landed costs typically happen around 3 different levels or groupings. You will have your purchase order line prices, or the per unit prices you pay the supplier. The second level are your shipment costs. These are associated to the bill of lading or, terminal handling charges or, insurance charges or whatever. And then last, you may have product-specific costs. This product has an import tariff or a duty of this percent or a fixed rate of this amount, whatever your other fees for handling these particular products. Sage ERP X3 allows you to manage these prior to the physical receipt of the goods. And for invoices that arrive after you receive the containers, these are handled through other methods, and we would be glad to show you some of the costing details associated with that. If you're interested in the specifics of how X3 calculates your inbound landed costs, let either your partner or one of our Sage ERP X3 customer account managers know. We can schedule a follow-up session with you. And I'm going to go back at it. We'll quickly go to the last topic I wanted to show you here. That's the receiving function. And this is opening up a receiving record. Again, you have all the receipts down the left-hand side. Our receiving record is number 55 here. And here on the header, you can see that the supplier has given us their packing slip number. The receipt is expected, or the payment is expected in the Chinese currency that is there. But when you look at the lines tab, you see all the different purchase orders, or there could be multiple purchase orders. In this case, there's just one. The products, the quantities that you see here, and then their receive status and their put away locations. So this is available to you as well. And if you want to drill into any of the details at that, you click on the lines action icon, and you see these other instant navigation shortcuts. Now, if you wanted to create a new one, you would be able to do this, and we're going to change this to, site NA011, and the supplier is CN001 with tab off. And notice now that while the receipt is empty, you can go over here to the container selection, and it will display for you all of the containers that have cleared customs. So this is very powerful for you, that only containers and only receipts that have cleared customs and are ready to be received can be displayed here, and you would select one of these. It would auto-populate this information that is available for you there. And you can place everything into a quality control hold while you do some inspections as well. Let's close out of that. I want to do one last landed cost calculation. We'll do it here on a purchase order. In this case, I'm going to grab purchase order. I believe it was number 78. Let's do that one. And you've seen this already before, but this was before we did it for a single container. Now we're doing it for an entire purchase order. You can see here that there are these are all in the same container, but 4 different products, and you can allocate your costs by the value. You can allocate them by the weight. We'll just do it quickly by the amount, and I'll say, we'll say for this example, the total freight charges for the entire order were $7,000 worth of freight, and I'm going to make some other miscellaneous landed charges. Again, watching this freight value change here, you'll be able to see that it will automatically recalculate these for you. at the prorate charges using these 4 different methods of doing the prorated charges that are available to you. With that, that's my demo. Let me switch back over to the PowerPoint to wrap this up. You saw this demonstration. I started with usability, mobility. We looked at purchase orders, vessels, containers, all these other processes. I'm not going to show you the tracking setups. I believe I showed those to you earlier in the import tracking in the purchase module. But I wanted to end up, I inserted this photo of a really old book to get you to look at 3 words that represent much of the pressure on distributors and what you face on a day-to-day basis. Your customers want you to lower the prices. They want you to lower the prices. Obviously, they'd love it if you gave it to them, but you can't. But it obviously places negative pressures on your profit margins. They want the products to work perfectly. They want you to deliver products that never break and always work as intended. And oh yeah, to provide your customers with a knowledgeable staff. You need to give information to your users so that they can respond to your customer demands. Furnish a one-stop shopping experience. You get the idea that you're able to do that. You become easier to do business with. People like calling you and working with you because you do that. You can then meet your customers' pricing expectations while resisting, the pricing pressures that are on the commoditization of the goods and products you offer. And then obviously you want to do those last 3 things. You want to meet, maximize, and minimize while preserving your profit margins. So with that, I'll open it up to